Hello, my friends. Welcome to System Self. My name is Lorenz, and today we're talking about responsibility and resolution. This is a deep subject, and we may get into slightly mystical territory. So, if that kind of stuff bothers you, you might want to move on. But today we're talking about how to resolve difficult situations in your life. And if you ever have relationships, perhaps a parent or a coworker or a partner or just a person where there is often some sort of tension or something is unresolved, this is the territory that we want to get into today. Now, I want to give a big example of this before I get into the personal example, right? So in South Africa in the mid 90s, after decades of oppressive rule and violence, the apartheid regime was stepping down. But in order to do so, in order to be willing to relinquish power peacefully, they needed guarantees against retribution. And in that interest, the Truth and Reconciliation Committee was set up, and it was primarily designed to be a restorative justice body that was more about resolution than retribution. It allowed everybody's story to be heard on both sides with a preference towards amnesty rather than punishment. And this allowed what would have otherwise most likely escalated into an extremely violent conflict. This allowed that to be resolved peacefully. It allowed the transition to power, the transition of power, to progress without more violence. And it's a really profound example of the power of forgiveness and processing and collective responsibility in the interest of really moving forward, in the interest of resolution. So what does that mean on a personal level? How does this apply on a personal level? Well, very often we are confronted with conflict. And very often this manifests itself very personally. And it might be even something that we're not always aware of, but there's tensions that we hold on to with people, whether it's a parent or someone close to us. There's something that isn't quite complete. And the challenge is that if you imagine yourself as a body of energy, which you are, right? You're a body of energy that is somehow expressing itself in different ways. And under ideal conditions, you have all of your energy available to you in whatever activity you might be engaged. But the reality is that more often than not, part of your energy and much of your energy is consumed in all these little knots, in all these little areas of your life that aren't quite complete, with people in your life that trigger you or somehow activate certain negative charged responses. And how do you work with that? What do you do with that? Because none of that serves you in living life. There's a beautiful expression that says resentment is like swallowing poison and waiting for the other person to die, right? All of these things we hold on to, it's like swallowing poison and waiting for the other person to die. It just doesn't work that way, right? It's your responsibility to be responsible for your energy and your presence in the world. Nobody else can do that for you. And there's a really powerful prayer that I want to get in today called the Ho'oponopono. This is a Hawaiian prayer that consists of 4 sentences. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. And I want to unpack this a little bit to really get to the deep levels, to the heart of the possibility of working with this prayer today, because it can be really, really powerful. So on the topmost level, I guarantee that if you approach anyone you have a conflict with that sequence of intentions, and you mean it, that conflict will resolve. You can go to a coworker, a partner, anybody. If you can approach them and actually mean that you mean love towards them, and you are genuinely sorry, and you are genuinely asking for forgiveness, and you generally experience gratitude for that, that will resolve 99% of conflicts right there. And sometimes that's very difficult to do because you might say, listen, this person wronged me. Why should I be sorry? Why should I ask forgiveness? I'm the one who's been wronged. There is no way I'm going to do that. Okay. So let's explore that. And we're going to explore some sensitive, slightly mystical territory here. So let's just approach that with an open mind and see where it goes. So first, before we get into anything mystical, if you just work with that prayer and really take each sentence, the sequence doesn't matter, right? And it's actually interesting to play with the sequence in different ways. You know, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. It doesn't matter which way you work with it, but when you're working with it, you might consider the implications of each sentence. So you're dealing with a conflict. What does it mean to be sorry? What does it mean for you to be sorry? What does it mean for the other person to be sorry? Really consider that in your heart. And what does forgiveness mean? Who needs to be forgiven? And is there anything that you need to be forgiven for? Is there anything that you can take responsibility for? And what does love mean in this context, right? To really sit with that and meditate on it and contemplate it as a framework for looking at the situation. And what does gratitude mean here? Is there anything to be grateful for or to appreciate? And if those things were given, if you did experience forgiveness, would there be gratitude there? So right there is a very powerful way to get into the situation. But if we take it to a slightly deeper level, you know, there's this spiritual concept of oneness that people like to talk about, and whether or not you subscribe to that, let's just explore it for the sake of an exercise. You know, what are the implications of oneness? What are the implications of this concept, right? Because it's a really you know, it's easy to talk about, but if you really unpack it, what is oneness? What is being? So imagine that somebody out there is suffering. What does that mean in the context of oneness? Well, let me frame that in a metaphor. Now, imagine that I have my arm here, or let's imagine you have your arm, right? You have your arm and it is in pain. There is something seriously painful. Someone is stabbing your hand. There is pain there. Now, is that something that you're responsible for? Do you feel that directly? Right? There is pain there. That you don't say, oh, my arm has pain. You say, I have pain. I'm suffering. Right? So there's oneness. That's oneness. You are one with your arm. There's pain there. You feel that oneness and you have a responsibility to address that. You're not waiting for your arm to address that pain and that suffering. Right? That pain and suffering is directly relevant to you, and you take responsibility for resolving it because you feel it. So that's oneness, right? It's not like, oh, there's a person suffering over there, you know, I'm gonna send them some well wishes, right? So it flips the script a little bit to think about it this way. But let's take the other side of it, right? There's a person over there causing pain. There's somebody that people like to point a finger at. Maybe it's a political figure that everybody likes to point a finger at, right? And so again, it's very easy to do that. But imagine again your arm. And your arm has maybe it has a knife in it or something, and it's causing someone else pain. You're jabbing someone else, or you're jabbing them in the hand like they were jabbing you a second ago, right? So you're causing pain to somebody. So again, that's oneness. That's oneness. You're not saying, hey, my arm is doing that. That's okay. You're responsible for what your arm is doing. There's oneness, right? And so when we begin to think about oneness in that sense, in the sense of a collective energetic being, a collective body of humanity, and we take it to that depth of level, this kind of prayer begins to take on a whole new meaning. And even counterintuitively with your own suffering. Is that really your suffering? Or is it everybody's suffering? Is it everybody's responsibility? when you're struggling, right? It's so easy to become isolated. Oh, I've got this, I've got a disease, I'm sick, or I'm hurting, I'm suffering, right? But is that yours in this context of oneness? Or is it everybody's? Is it everybody's responsibility? So if we look at the Ho'oponopono prayer through this lens of I love you, right? Even in that sense of the collective, the I is less there. So there's love. There is love that is immanent in the being. And then I'm sorry. Well, what does sorry mean in that context? It almost dissolves into responsibility, because if there isn't a me and there isn't a you, there isn't something to be sorry for. There is just the expression of responsibility. There is the responsibility for everything that happens that is shared in the being. And then, please forgive me. Again, what does forgiveness mean in that context? There is just forgiveness. There is forgiveness because there is forgetfulness, right? This is the I'm sorry. Like, I forgot that you are me and I am you. I forgot, and now I'm remembering. But implicit in that, there is the forgiveness, which is the product of the love, right? When there is love, there is always forgiveness. So the forgiveness is just there. It is something to tune into on a collective level. And then, of course, the natural product of that, the natural expression of that, is gratitude, is appreciation. Appreciation for the experience, appreciation for the forgiveness, for the love. And this is where Ho'oponopono really can take you to a much deeper level of resolution, to really begin to see everything as not just something that somebody else does, or that you do, or that somebody else is responsible for, but to take responsibility as an individual for the collective, and to, if nothing else, work with that, to tune into it in some way, to see if you can find some level of peace and resolution in the exercise of exploring situations through that lens, right? If nothing else, you don't need to buy into any philosophy of oneness, but it can be very powerful to explore things through this lens of perception. What if it was that way? What would responsibility and forgiveness look like? What would your orientation and response and action be in this situation, right? And this is where Ho'oponopono prayer offers a really powerful and simple, it's so simple. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. Right? It's so simple, but there's so many layers to it. Again, you can use it as a framework to approach anybody that you have conflict with, and I guarantee that if you mean it, if you find a way to say it from your heart and you mean it, that alone will open up a radical world of relationship. There is, in the Landmark Forum, one of the biggest things about the Landmark Forum is about taking responsibility. And so you literally, you go to people that you have tension with and you say, I've been pretending that. So, we're always pretending that, or many times we're pretending that we're not upset by something, or pretending that whatever, right? There's something there to really examine. And in that, right, that's where we can really come to a person with a genuine apology, when we bring very deep awareness to our own culpability in a situation. Where were we responsible for something? You don't even need to get mystical on that. Where were we responsible for something? And really take ownership of that and step into it and open a conversation from that level of accountability and responsibility, right? That's where the transformation happens. And that's where there's really an opportunity to come back to completion and integrity, right? The integrity of wholeness, the integrity of your word, that person's word, the resolution that occurs, the beauty and the freedom, right? The inner freedom. Because without that resolution, there is no freedom. Because as long as some part of your energy, right, you were a bundle of energy that is expressing itself in the world. And without that resolution, there are parts of you that are caught up in some sort of situation, right? That is exactly where the freedom is limited, right? But resolving that is freedom, right? And then there's freedom, and you're free to engage with life fully, with full presence. That's power. That's beauty. That's aliveness. Thank you for watching. This is System Self, and my commitment to you is subtle insights that deliver significant changes. We explore awareness in action. I look forward to our conversations in the future. Please subscribe to the channel, share this video with a friend. Much love.